Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something a lot of us love, recreational boating. It's all about fun, freedom on the water, right? Well, today we're going to look at some of the hidden dangers, the ones that are surprisingly common but almost always overlooked.
So let's just jump right in with a number that really frames this whole conversation. 70%. According to the U.S. Coast Guard's latest data, a whopping 70% of all recreational boating deaths are from drowning. That's not just another stat. It's really the central, most important fact when we talk about boating safety.
You know, when you think of boating accidents, you might picture some huge yacht caught in a storm way out at sea. But this slide, it just shatters that idea. The data is overwhelming. These tragedies are happening on the small boats, the ones under 26 feet. You know, the kind millions of us use every single weekend. It really brings the risk a lot closer to home, doesn't it?
So to really get a handle on how to stay safe, we've got to push past the assumptions and see what the data actually tells us about what's happening out there.
Okay, take a look at this chart. You might think the biggest dangers are, huge storms or the boat's engine failing spectacularly, but that's not it at all. It's simple, preventable human error. The number one cause, operator inattention. Just not paying attention. Right behind that is inexperience and not having a proper lookout. I mean, these are the basics, but they have absolutely devastating consequences.
And this table really drives home when things are going wrong. It's not during some high-speed, crazy maneuver. Look at this. The highest number of deaths happen when people are just relaxing or fishing. It seems like the moment we let our guard down, the risk actually shoots way up.
Okay, so we see that simple mistakes are leading to these drownings. But what's the tipping point? What turns a simple mistake into a fatal one? Well, the data from studies all over the world consistently points to two critical factors. Okay, first up, and this number is it's almost hard to believe. An Australian study found that in over 90% of all boating-related drownings, the victim wasn't wearing a life jacket. 90.4%. I mean, that tells you everything, right? That one piece of equipment is probably the single most critical factor between life and death.
And the second big factor? Alcohol. That same study found that almost a third of all these drowning incidents involve drinking. It just makes sense, right? Alcohol messes with your judgment, your balance, your coordination. It dramatically raises the chances of you falling in, and it makes it so much harder to save yourself if you do.
And that leads us to this really common and frankly dangerous myth about drinking on a boat. So many people think, hey, as long as the person driving is sober, we're all good. The whole designated driver idea. But the reality is, that's not how it works on the water.
Yeah, don't just take my word for it. Look at this research from the Journal of the American Medical Association. It's pretty clear. The risk of dying is almost exactly the same for a drunk passenger as it is for a drunk operator. And why is that? Well, think about it. The most common way people die isn't in a crash. It's from falling overboard. And an impaired passenger is way more likely to do that, no matter who's steering the boat.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that preventing these awful tragedies isn't about following one single rule. It's really about building a consistent culture of safety where being prepared is just second nature, not something you think about at the last minute.
So how do you build that culture? Well, the experts break it down into 4 key steps. It's not enough to just have safety courses out there. The material has to be good, obviously. Then you have to get people to actually take the courses. And here's the most important part. You have to get them to act on what they learned. That last step, changing your actual behavior out on the water, that's the hardest part, but it's the one that really saves lives.
And that culture, it really starts with these simple little habits that you do every single time. Here are just a few of the big ones. Checking the weather before you go and while you're out, making sure you've got enough fuel, doing a quick check of the boat and the gear, and this is huge. Telling someone where you're going and when you'll be back. These things don't take a lot of time, but man, they can make all the difference if something goes wrong.
Look, at the end of the day, laws and regulations are important, but they can only do so much. I love this quote from Small Craft Advisory magazine. It's pretty blunt, a textbook example of lawmakers being unable to legislate against foolishness. It really gets to the heart of it. Safety at its core is about personal responsibility. So, with all that data, all that advice, it all comes back to you. It comes down to the choices you make the next time you step on a boat.
All right, so let's boil this all down to the absolute must-dos. Number 1, wear your life jacket. Don't just have it on the boat, wear it. It only works if it's on you. 2, boat sober. And remember, that's for everybody on board, not just the driver. 3, take a safety course. You'll always learn something. 4, be aware of what's happening around you. Pay attention. And finally, don't overload your boat. Know its limits. These 5 things, they directly target the main reasons people get into trouble out there.
So, we're going to leave you with this question to think about. Because understanding all these risks, it's not meant to scare you away from boating. Not at all. It's about respecting the water. And that respect, that's the first step, the most important step, to having an amazing time out there and making sure you always come home safe.